The glue up for the two legs are now complete, and they turned out very, very nice. The first leg was a learning experience, and you can see right here that I do have a little problem with a gap, and this is true on both sides. So I don't know what happened with my clamping, but I do know, since it was the first one I did, I kind of ran out of time with the glue. It's just a lot of glue surfaces. So over on the second leg, I had my father help me put some glue on, and together we were able to get a much, much tighter joint. So I'm hoping to resolve this problem. This is either going to be one of the stupidest things I've ever done, or it's going to be brilliant. So my idea is to put some glue in the joint, but of course it's got to go in far. So I have my air compressor hooked up, and if I'm lucky, I can try to force that glue into the joint, and then I have some heavy duty pipe clamps that I can pull that together, because it does go together. It just didn't seem to stick with the glue. I've taped wood to the side of the legs now, so I don't have to worry about holding those in place while I'm putting the clamps on. And I am going to put a little bit of glue right where the seam is. And that, of course, doesn't really want to go in. So let's see what happens. It's about 14 hours since I did the glue up of the leg, and I have almost zero confidence that I got enough glue in between the joint by trying to blow it in. I'm sure I got about 1/4 of an inch to maybe 1/2 an inch of glue going all the way up and down on both sides, but I had to use a lot of force and pressure to bring this board together with the rest of the leg. So I'm afraid that if I was just to simply take off the clamps right now, that it probably just pop. It might even pull apart the wood, being that the glue is probably stronger than the wood itself. So before I take off those clamps, I'm going to go ahead and use some 3.5 inch screws. I was trying not to put metal through the legs, but I think it's going to be my best choice. So I am eventually going to be putting some holes straight through the front of the legs for some hold fast, and they're going to go every 6 inches. So I'm going to make sure that my screws that I put in aren't going to be in that same location. So my plan is to countersink these holes in enough so that I can put some wood plugs in. So you'll still see them, and that's fine, but it won't be exposed metal there. Now, the problem I have is, since this was not part of my original plan, is that the wood that I put over the legs to prevent from marring the wood is pretty much where I want to drill my holes. So I can only get one hole in to start with, and then I'm hoping when I take off this clamp that the ones on the other side will be enough to keep this without it popping. If it pops, I guess it just pops, but I'm hoping that it won't. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've already measured off where I want some of these holes. So I'm going to use my awl, get a nice starting point, and I'm using a 3/8 inch Forstner bit here to get a nice circular hole that I'll be able to put a plug in later. Okay, so I went in a little bit farther than the Forstner bit itself, I think. Yep, good. So that should give me enough room for the plug. Now once I have that, I need to drill a pilot hole for the screw. Using that same center point, I should be able to feel it. Now I'm going to put the screw in. So I'm going to keep these clamps on, but I need to take off these other clamps, and I guess I'm going to hope for the best here. So I'll start way up here. No popping sound yet, but of course it's this big boy right here which is holding everything together. I think I'm going to try to replace the clamp as quickly as possible. Well, it didn't pop yet. Well, maybe my glue joint was stronger than I thought, but I'm still not going to take any chances. So that these holes look beautiful, I'm going to be measuring in the same distance, which in this case is 2.5. That puts it about halfway in. Same procedure. Use my awl. Okay, well, I can't imagine that going anywhere when I take these clamps off, so I'm going to listen carefully. Well, I don't hear any popping sounds, so I guess I would have to qualify this as a success. So now I'm going to pre-drill on the other side, the other leg, before I start the whole glue-up procedure. And that way it'll be ready to go. In fact, the screws might be enough to even pull the whole thing together. I won't have to use as many clamps, but I probably will still use a ton of clamps anyway. Okay, I'm using some store-bought plugs, and all I'm going to do is squeeze some glue into the hole, probably more than I actually need. Yeah, definitely more than I need, but that's okay. I'll take that glue and I'll put that in the next hole. I'll work it in there. Okay. And then there's not much of a grain to these. They're pretty generic. I'm not sure what wood it's made out of. And I'm just going to pop it in the hole. Lightly tap it. Doesn't look like I'm really even going to sand those flush. Their hole was a little bit bigger than I expected, I guess. It said 3/8. That'll look good. We're looking at the other side of the leg, and I've got this crack which goes down the entire length of this outside board. It's nothing structural to worry about, but what it means is that I really can't put a screw right in the middle of the leg like I did on the other side. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do pairs of screws, and you can see that I have it marked off there. So instead of using 4 screws that I use on the other side, I guess I'm going to use 8 screws. You can see how big that crack is, so that's what I'm going to be trying to pull together. It finally comes together towards the bottom. So the plan is to simply add glue like I did before, force it in the crack, and I'm going to pre-drill all this stuff in advance, and I'll know where to put my blocks so that my clamps won't interfere. It'll make it a lot easier to do this process. Here is the final result before I've done the sanding on these legs. So I have 2 screws covered with plugs. Came out rather nicely. The joint is together and has stayed together, so I'm very pleased with that result. Speaking of being pleased, I'm finally at a point where I have a real sense of accomplishment here. I have the 2 legs and this center support rack, which is going to be hanging, so I'm going to call it a hanger here. It's 3/4 of an inch shorter than the leg, so it's not going to touch the floor, but I'm going to be attaching shelves to it. So the next step is going to be taking all of these legs and hangers off, and I want to clean up all the glue. So the outside of that, the edges are going to be rather easy. I think I'm just going to run that on my jointer. The inside of the legs will take more handwork, particularly sanding. And then I'm going to route out everything as well. So here you can see the whole bench. It's looking pretty good. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.